Welcome to another thrilling installment of the Isolated Literary Society presents, and this series book is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Thank you very much to dedicated Isolated Literary Society viewer Michelle for sending me this lovely edition of the Wonderland stories and some other stories. Got gold pages. It's got red, fancy, shiny bits on the front. So I don't have to read out of that teeny tiny edition, pocket edition that I had in the preview. So anyway, welcome. I'm happy to see everyone. Hello, Tila. Hello, Erin. I just wanted to see what you guys were chatting about while you were waiting for me and looking at the beautiful sign that I made. Do you like my new backdrop? It's very professional. Yes, Aaron got a hamster, or his girlfriend got a foster hamster. So very exciting.
Wow. That's exciting. Does it smell like elderberries?
That is a very good question. Anyway, hopefully since I did the professional thing and started the stream early and had a backdrop and everything, everyone will be here. Everybody who got their notifications. Although some people might have had their notifications set for 6, so I will not judge them if they trickle in. So yeah, I'm very on brand. I've got a teacup to drink water out of. Also, on the sort of surrealist theme, this teacup says grandmother on the inside. I'm not a grandmother, in case anyone was unclear.
You're not?
Nope.
What?
I'm not any kind of mother. I guess I'm a
grand
cat.
Or otherwise.
I'm a cat mom. Oh, I can't turn the camera to the side to show Pepper unless I want to spoil the illusion of this beautiful backdrop.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Ugh, that's tough. I'll have to think about that, you guys, because he looks so peaceful and relaxed, and I don't want to pick him up and drag him over here. But he does have a thematically appropriate kerchief for this book. I made it for him just today.
He's a French waiter.
Yeah. No, he's closet cosplaying his through the looking glass. That's what he's doing. Okay. Come here, Pepper. I know. Say hello. Look at your little chessboard kerchief.
What is going on? I did not approve this.
Yeah, you didn't ask for this. You did not ask me to be born. Okay. I shall set you free. It's been a month since they've seen you, Pepper. They needed a Pepper visit.
He feels very undignified.
Yes. To be like, how dare you? Yeah, that little Mew. It's pretty adorable. Okay. Well, I think that's given people enough time to remember that this is happening and tune in. So let's get started, you guys. I'm very stoked. It's been exactly a month since I finished Persuasion. Can you believe it?
That is hard to believe, honestly. Yeah, it does not feel that long.
Right? And that is way the longest. I think the longest other break I've done. I started doing this in late March and mid-late March, like maybe the 19th or 20th, something like that. And then the longest break I've had between books was like 2 weeks, I think, before this one. So
was that after Cowboy Fang?
I can't remember. Most of the breaks were about a week. I think one of them I did 2 weeks, but yeah, this one was a whole month. I'm sorry for leaving you for a whole month, but I A, needed a break, and B, wanted to give. I decided on doing Alice's Adventures in Wonderland a little over a week ago, and I decided I was going to give myself a whole week to sort of like tell people this was happening, because I kept meeting people or running into people, chatting with friends online I've known for years. They'd be like, "What have you been up to?" I'm like, "Well, I'm doing the live stream thing," and they're like, "What?" So I thought maybe I should actually
come join me.
So people had a chance to actually get in on the first day of the book. Although I hope people won't mind kind of popping in and out with this book because, well, I don't know that it has a plot exactly. And most people are at least loosely familiar with it. But if you've never read the book itself, there's definitely going to be some stuff in here that you've never encountered. So,
Oh yeah, definitely. If all you've ever seen is the Disney movie,
especially if you've only seen the Disney movie.
yeah,
If you've only seen the Disney movie, there's like all kinds of stuff in here. And there's going to be some stuff that's from Through the Looking Glass that we won't get to until the next book. But I'm thinking I'll probably read that after this one because it's not that long.
no, Through the Looking Glass is pretty short.
They're both pretty short.
Oh really? I remember. Well, it's been years since I read either of them.
Okay, y'all. Let's do this. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book herself. So she was considering in her own mind, as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran very close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be late." When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it, and then hurried on, Alice started to her feet, for it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it, and burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it, and fortunately was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. In another moment, down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way, and then dipped suddenly down, so suddenly that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down a very deep well. Either the well was very deep, or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her, and to wonder what was going to happen next. First, she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well, and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there she saw maps and pictures hung upon pegs. She took down a jar from one of the shelves as she passed. It was labeled orange marmalade, but to her great disappointment it was empty. She did not like to drop the jar for fear of killing somebody, so managed to put it in one of the cupboards as she fell past it. Well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they'll all think of me at home. Why, I wouldn't say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house, which was very likely true.
These are commonplace occurrences in Alice's life.
Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time, she said aloud. I must be getting somewhere near the center of the earth. Let me see. That would be 4,000 miles. There was no one to listen to her. Still, it was good practice to say it over. Yes, that's about the right distance, but I wonder what latitude or longitude I've got to. Alice had no idea what latitude was, or longitude either, but thought they were nice, grand words to say. Presently she began again. I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth. How funny it'll seem to come out among the people that walk with their heads downward. The antipathies, I think. She was rather glad there was no one listening this time, as it didn't sound at all the right word. You're falling through the air. Do you think you could manage it? Well, do you?
Expect your report tomorrow.
Oh. And what an ignorant little girl she'll think me for asking. No, it'll never do to ask. Perhaps I shall see it written up somewhere. It's supposed to be being written down somewhere. Down, down, down. There was nothing else to do, so Alice soon began talking again. Dinah'll miss me very much tonight, I should think. Dinah was the cat. I hope they remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Oh, Dinah, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I'm afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But do cats eat bats, I wonder? And here Alice began to get rather sleepy, and went on saying to herself in a dreamy sort of way, do cats eat bats? Do cats eat bats? And sometimes, do bats eat cats? For, you see, as she couldn't answer either question, it didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off, and had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dinah, and saying to her very earnestly, Now, Dinah, tell me the truth. Did you ever eat a bat? When suddenly, thump, thump, down she came upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, and the fall was over. It felt necessary to read that whole fall without a lot of commentary, even though I was really tempted to read what you guys were saying in the chat, which was very likely true, is a great button, Tila. Yes, it is. Aaron, I forgive you for being late, especially since you were technically on time, and then you disappeared. In England, they're more like to say fill in a form, where we would say fill out a form.
Yeah.
Either one makes sense.
Fry and Lori.
Yeah.
A bit about it.
Yeah. Fill in a form, fill in a form.
But I would think written up means like written on a sign.
Yes.
Like,
well, I think of written up, it's be like, let me write it up. Like, let me do, it's the action. Whereas it has now that I've written it up, it has now been written down.
Yeah.
I don't know that makes any sense.
But written up and down.
It's just how it disappears. Oh, well, for laundry reasons is why Aaron disappeared. I suppose that's forgiven. One must do laundry.
One must.
Okay. Alice was not a bit hurt, and she jumped up to her feet in a moment, and she looked up, but it was all dark overhead. Before her was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still in sight, hurrying down it. There was not a moment to be lost. Away went Alice like the wind, and was just in time to hear it say, as it turned a corner, Oh, my ears and whiskers, how late it's getting. She was close behind it when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall, which was lit up by a row of lamps hanging from the roof. There were doors all round was ever to get out again. Suddenly she came upon a little three-legged table, all made of solid glass. There was nothing on it except a tiny golden key, and Alice's first thought was that it might belong to one of the doors of the hall. But alas, either the locks were too large, or the key... Here we have our first illustration. I mean, technically, there's an illustration of the white rabbit on the first page. I could have showed you guys that. But Aaron, that's very... that feels very Wonderland to comment. Whether it's written up or written down, it's generally also written sideways. Unless it's Chinese, right? No. Chinese is written...
Chinese is written up and
up and down. Probably at least one other language, I imagine. Okay.
Japanese.
There you go. See? What did I say? What did I say?
Sorry.
She came upon a low curtain she had not noticed before, and behind it was a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her great delight, it fitted. Alice opened the door and found it led into a small passage, not much larger than a rat hole. Is that larger than a mouse hole, though? That's a good question. She knelt down and looked along the passage into the loveliest garden you ever saw. How she longed to get out of that dark hall and wander about. It would be of very little use without my shoulders. Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could, if only I knew how to begin. For you see, so many out-of-the-way things had happened lately that Alice had begun to think that very few things indeed were really impossible. There seemed to be no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she might find another key on it, or at any rate a book of rules for shutting people up like telescopes. This time she found a little bottle on it, which certainly was not here before, said Alice. And round the neck of the bottle was a paper label, with the words, Drink Me, beautifully printed on it in large letters.
Seems legit.
Yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't just drink that. This is actually seems like a good time to mention. I just remembered I had intended to open my previous streams to try and keep this the commentary and the chat for all of you relatively kid friendly. We're not trying to make this like actually for kids, but let's like err on the side just in case any kids want to tune in, since it is a kids book. So let's try to keep a civil tongue in our heads. Tila. Oh, hi, Jesse. I didn't even see that you were in here. That's lovely to have you here. Oh, yay. Finally, Michelle has arrived. I noticed you weren't here, and I honestly thought, should I wait? She bought me the book. I don't want to start without her, but how long do you wait? Anyway, I'm
15
glad
minutes for a professor.
I'm glad you were only briefly late for a very important date. You haven't missed that much. So far. All right, we have just gotten to the bottle that says drink me. Kids, don't drink strange bottles that you find, even if they tell you to. Drink what is
Especially
in
if
them.
they tell you
And
to.
honestly, especially if they tell you to. Ask an adult if you should drink strange bottles that you find lying about on the ground. All right. It was all very well to say, drink me, but the wise little Alice was not going to do that in a hurry, see? No, I'll look first, she said, to see whether it's marked poison or not. For she had read several nice little histories about children who had got burnt and eaten up by wild beasts and other unpleasant things, all because they would not remember the simple rules their friends had taught them, such as that a red-hot poker will burn you if you hold it too long, and that if you cut your finger very deeply with a knife, it usually bleeds. And she had never forgotten that if you drink something from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certain to disagree with you, sooner or later.
I mean, that's one way to put it. Sure.
Almost certain. However, this bottle was not marked poison, so Alice ventured to taste it, and finding it very nice, it had, in fact, a sort of mixed flavor of cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey, toffee, and hot buttered toast, which really does sound like a very strange combination.
It does.
She very soon finished it off. Now, I also do want to note, if any kids are watching, checking whether a bottle is marked poison is a good first step, but that is not the only thing that you should do before you decide to drink a strange bottle you find lying around on a strange table.
Yes.
What a curious feeling, said Alice, all the right size for going through the little door into that lovely garden. First, however, she waited for a few minutes to see if she was going to shrink any further. She felt a little nervous about this. For it might end, you know, said Alice to herself, in my going out altogether like a candle. I wonder what I should be like then. And she tried to fancy what the flame of a candle is like after the candle is blown out, for she could not remember ever having seen such a thing. I really love Jesse's comment that all this language minutia has left him pretty gruntled. People aren't gruntled nearly often enough. I feel perfectly rot today.
I've never heard of underwrought. You
I
can
don't think that one's
rot if you are a fence.
Yes. If you're a bit of iron.
Yes.
Yes, Erin is feeling perfectly whelmed.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I guess underwrought might not be. That might be something people say as a joke.
Possibly,
Maybe overwrought is the only one that is technically the Queen's English. Garden at once. But alas for poor Alice! When she got to the door, she found she had forgotten the little golden key. And when she went back to the table for it, she found she could not possibly reach it. She could see it quite plainly through the glass, and she tried her best to climb up one of the legs of the table, but it was too slippery. And when she had tired herself out with trying, the poor little thing sat down and cried. Come, there's no use in crying like that, said Alice to herself rather sharply, clearly, as to bring tears into her own eyes. And once she remembered trying to box her own ears for having cheated herself in a game of croquet she was playing against herself, for this curious, unrespectable person. Soon her eye fell on a little glass box that was lying under the table. She opened it, and found in it a very small cake, on which the words "Eat me" were beautifully marked in currants. Now, just so everyone knows, currants are sort of like a little, a fancy little British raisin. Just in case you didn't know what a currant was. They're not actually British. I feel like they're in British food a lot more than they are in American.
No, this was that whole thing that we looked up the
Yeah.
one time.
Oh, also, we did look it up once, and there's actually technically more than one kind of fruit called a currant. So
Yes.
that's very exciting. I forgot to adjust
Oh,
the light.
is it
We
too
don't-
bright over here?
No. I was thinking it actually was a bit dim.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about the sun this time because it's quite overcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
I
have
think
enough light to
we're
read
good.
by?
Hmm?
You
Yes.
have-
No,
okay.
I'm good. I angled the blinds over here so I was getting a little more light. As I was noting to Carolyn during the break that I will have to start setting up some sort of lighting situation.
Yes.
So I've just always used daylight because we have a good windows in the living room. But as the year grows on,
Tomorrow's the first day of August.
okay. So again, kids, don't eat strange little cakes, even if they tell you to reach the key. And if it makes me grow smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden, and I don't care which happens. She ate a little bit and said anxiously to herself, "Which way? Which way?" holding her hand on the top of her head to feel which way it was growing. And she was quite surprised to find she remained the same size. To be sure, this generally happens when one eats cake. But Alice had got so much into the way of expecting nothing but out of the way things to happen that it seemed sometimes you need to wait a minute. Be patient. Okay. Chapter 2. Forgot how to speak good English. Now I'm opening out like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, feet. For when she looked down at her feet, they seemed to be almost out of sight. They were getting so far off. Oh, my poor little feet. I wonder who will put on your shoes and stockings for you now, dears. I'm sure I shan't be able to. I shall be a great deal too far off to trouble myself about you. You must manage the best way you can, and I must be kind to them, thought Alice. Or perhaps they won't walk the way I want to, she thought. And how funny it'll seem sending presents to one's own feet. And how odd the directions will look. Alice's right foot, Esquire, hearthrug near the fender, more than 9 feet high, and she at once took up the little golden key and hurried off to find the garden door. There we have Alice unbended like the largest telescope there ever was. Poor Alice. It was as much as she could do lying down on one side, to look through into the garden with one eye, but to get through was more hopeless than ever. She sat down and began to cry again. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, said Alice, a great girl like you. She might well say this. To go on crying in this way. Stop this moment, I tell you. But she went on all the same, shedding gallons of tears, until there was a large pool all around her, about 4 inches deep and reaching half down the hall. After a time, she heard a little pattering of feet in the distance, and she hastily dried her eyes, trotting along in a great hurry, muttering to himself as he came, Oh, the Duchess, the Duchess! Oh, won't she be savage if I've kept her waiting? The rabbit started violently, dropped the white kid gloves and the fan, and scurried away into the darkness as hard as he could go. Alice took up the fan and gloves on just as usual. I wonder if I've been changed in the night. Let me think. Was I the same when I got up this morning? I almost think I can remember feeling a little different. But if I'm not the same, the next question is, who in the world am I? Oh, that's a great puzzle. And she began thinking over all the children she knew that were the same age as herself, to see if she could have been changed for any of them. I'm sure I'm not. She knows such a very little. Besides, she's she, and I'm I, and oh dear, how puzzling it all is. If I try, I'll try if I know all the things I used to know. Let me see. 4 times 5 is 12, and 4 times 6 is 13, and 4 times 7 is, oh dear, I shall never get to 20 at that rate. However, the multiplication table doesn't signify. Let's try geography. London is the capital of Paris, and Paris is the capital of Rome, and Rome, oh no, that's all wrong, I'm certain. Kids, that is all wrong. Please don't take advice from Alice.
Yeah.
I must have been changed from Mabel. I'll try and say, How doth the little, which is the name of a poem. And she crossed her hands on her lap as if she were saying lessons, and began to repeat it. But her voice sounded hoarse and strange. Waters of the Nile on every golden scale. How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spread his claws, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. I'm sure that would be hilarious to little Victorian children who knew the the real poem
Yes.
and how it's supposed to go. I'm sure I looked it up at one point, but I don't remember what the real one is.
I think they say it.
How doth the little bumblebee or something like that?
busy bee.
Busy bee. There you go. Oh, I was so close.
Very good. They do have the same number of syllables.
I'm sure those are not the right words, said poor Alice, and her eyes filled with tears again as she went on. I must be Mabel after all. I know I shall have to go and live in that poky little house and have next to no toys to play with, and oh, ever so many lessons to learn. No, I've made up my mind about it. If I'm Mabel, I'll stay down here. It'll be no use putting their heads down and saying, come up again, dear. I shall only look up and say, who am I then? Tell me that first, and then, if I like being that person, I'll come up. If not, I'll stay down here till I'm somebody else. But, oh, dear, cried Alice with a sudden burst of tears. Their heads down. I'm so very tired of being all alone here. I feel like I skipped an illustration. Oh, yes, of rude. As she said this, she looked down at her hands and was surprised to see that she had put on one of the rabbit's little white kid gloves while she was talking. How can I have done that? She thought. I must be growing small again. She got up and went to the table to measure herself by it, and found that, as nearly as she could guess, she was now about 2 feet high and was going on shrinking rapidly. She soon found out that the cause of this was the fan she was holding, and she dropped it hastily, just in time to avoid shrinking away altogether. That was a narrow escape, said Alice, a good deal frightened at the sudden change, but very glad to find herself still in existence. And now for the garden, and she ran with all speed back to the little door. But alas, the little door was shut again, and the little golden tea was lying. Ever would you put it back on the table?
I know, right? Just leave things on the floor.
Start leaving things on the floor. Too bad that it is. And as she said these words, her foot slipped, and in another moment, splash! She was up to her chin in salt water. Her first idea was she had somehow fallen into the sea, and in that case I can go back by railway, she said to herself. Alice had been to the seaside once in her life, and had come to the general conclusion that wherever you go on the English coast, you find a number of bathing machines in the sea, some children digging in the sand with wooden spades, then a row of lodging houses, and behind them, a railway station. Bathing machines.
Yes. Still.
Don't they mention them in Persuasion? Look up bathing machines if you're curious, but I regret to inform you they're not really machines. I don't know why they were called machines.
Look mechanical though. Well,
Out to sea, and so nobody has to see you in your swimming costume, which would be quite naughty.
Lord Peter mentions them.
Mhm.
Or Harriet, or someone mentions them in this.
Carolyn is currently reading Dorothy L. Sayers' Have His Carcass.
Yes. So.
Oh, how I wish I could read some Dorothy Sayers on this channel. I could take the chance. Fancy new backdrop is falling. Oh, no, you got to see a little bit of the edge. I shall have to work on this a little before the next stream. Anyway, it's very disappointing. I just was expecting more machinery involved. However, she soon made out that she was in the pool of tears which she had wept when she was 9 feet high. Oh, I wish I hadn't cried so much, said Alice as she swam about, trying to find her way out. I shall be punished for it now, I suppose, by being drowned in my own tears. That will be a queer thing, to be sure. However, everything is queer today. Girl. I feel that.
Is that the title of an upcoming album or song, at least?
Everything is queer today. Just then, she heard something splashing about in the pool a little way off, and she swam near to make out what it was. At first she thought it must be a walrus or a hippopotamus. And, oh, Mouse, do you know the way out of this pool? I am very tired of swimming about here, oh, Mouse. Alice thought this must be the right way of speaking to a mouse. She had never done such a thing before, but she remembered having seen in her brother's Latin grammar, a mouse, of a mouse, to a mouse, oh. Perhaps it doesn't understand English, thought Alice. Would you mind?
Oh.
I dare say it's a French mouse come over with William the Conqueror. For, with all her knowledge of history, Alice had no very clear notion of how long ago anything had happened. all over with fright. "Oh, I beg your pardon," cried Alice hastily, afraid she had hurt the poor animal's feelings. "I quite forgot you didn't like cats." "Où est ma chat?" is "Where is my cat?" in French, in case you didn't know, since children are not instructed in French at this age anymore.
Mhm.
Well, not usually. "Not like cats!" cried the mouse in a shrill, passionate voice. "Would you like cats if you were me?" "Well, perhaps not," said Alice in a soothing voice. "Don't be angry about it. And yet I wish I'd show you our cat Dinah. I think you'd take a fancy to cats if you could only see her. She's such a dear little thing." Alice went on, half to herself, as she swam lazily about in the pool. "She sits purring so nicely by the fire, licking her paws and washing her face. She's such a nice, soft thing to nurse. And she's such a capital one for catching mice." "Oh, I beg your pardon," cried Alice again, for this time the mouse was bristling all over, and she felt certain it must be really offended. "We won't talk about her any more if you'd rather not." We indeed," cried the mouse, who was trembling down to the end of his tail. "As if I would talk on the subject. Our family has always hated cats. Nasty, low, vulgar things. Don't let me hear the name again." "I won't indeed," said Alice, in a great hurry to change the subject of conversation. "Are you fond of dogs?" The mouse did not answer, so Alice went on eagerly. "There's such a nice little dog near our house that I would like to show you. A little bright-eyed terrier, with such long curly brown hair. And it'll fetch things when you throw them, and it'll sit up and beg for its dinner and all sorts of things. I can't remember half of them. And it belongs to a farmer, and he says it's so useful it's worth £100. He says it's—"
Yeah.
For the mouse was swimming away from her as hard as it could go and making quite a commotion in the pool as it went. And I don't blame it. So she called softly after it, "Mouse dear, do come back again, and we won't talk about cats or dogs either if you don't like it." When the mouse heard this, it turned round and swam slowly back to her. Its face was quite pale, with passion, Alice thought, and it said in a low, trembling voice, "Let us get to the shore. High time to go, for the pool was getting quite crowded with the birds and animals that had fallen into it. There was a duck and a dodo, a lory and an eaglet, and several other curious creatures." Alice led the way, and the whole party swam to the shore. Oh, goodness. What a chapter. This chapter breaks are very odd moments, really.
Yes.
They're slightly arbitrary. But then this was originally intended to be, just told to a child. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we have the mouse's tail coming up. So that's the whole.
yes. All right. So let's see. How long? Okay. Yes.
War
Let's
into
just
its own
start.
chapter.
Yes. Chapter 3: A caucus race and a long tail. Before we begin, there were indeed they were indeed a queer-looking party that assembled on the bank. The birds with bedraggled feathers. Actually, it just says draggled. I just immediately said bedraggled because I've never heard someone say the word draggled.
Yeah.
That's another one. Apparently, you can just be draggled instead of being described as bedraggled. The animals with their fur clinging close to them and all dripping wet, cross, and uncomfortable. The first question, of course, was how to get dry again. They had a consultation about this, and after a few minutes it seemed quite natural to Alice to find herself talking familiarly with them, as if she had known them all her life. Indeed, she had quite a long argument with the Lory, who at last turned sulky and would only say, "I am older than you and must know better." And this Alice would not allow without knowing how old it was, and as the Lory positively refused to tell its age, there was no more to be said. I don't know what a Lory is. Lory? Is that a kind of a bird?
I think so. To be honest, some of these things when I originally read it, I just sort of figured from the illustrations.
Yeah. I'm sure it's some sort of bird because it's listed in the list of duck, dodo, lory, and eaglet, so presumably
Yeah.
it is also a bird. You may look it up if you wish to know what kind of bird, but I think it's a very rude bird. At last the mouse, who seemed to be a person of authority among them, called out, "Sit down, all of you, and listen to me. I'll soon make you dry enough." They all sat down at once in a large ring, with the mouse in the middle. Alice kept her eyes anxiously fixed on it, for she felt sure she would catch a bad cold. Silence all round, if you please. William the Conqueror, whose cause was favoured by the Pope, was soon submitted to by the English, who wanted leaders, and had been of late much accustomed to usurpation and conquest. Edwin and Morcar, the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria. Ugh, said the Lorry hastily. I thought you did, said the Mouse. I proceed. Edwin and Morcar, the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria, declared for him, and even the Mouse replied rather crossly, Of course you know what it means. I know what it means well enough when I find a thing, said the Duck. It's generally a frog or a worm. The question is, what did the Archbishop find? The Mouse did not notice this question, but hurriedly went on. Found it advisable to go with Edgar Atheling to meet William and offer him the crown. William's conduct at first was moderate, but the insolence of his Normans. How are you getting on now, my dear? It continued, turning to Alice as it spoke. As wet as ever, said Alice in a melancholy tone. It doesn't seem to dry me at all. In that case, said the Dodo solemnly, rising to its feet, I move that the meeting adjourn for the immediate adoption of more energetic remedies. Speak English, said the Eaglet. I don't know the meaning of half those long words, and what's more, I don't believe you do either. Then the Eaglet bent down its head to hide a smile. Some of the other birds tittered audibly. What I was going to say, said the Dodo in an offended tone, was that the best thing to get us dry would be a caucus race. What is a caucus race? Said Alice. Not that she wanted much to know, but the Dodo had paused as if it thought that somebody ought to speak, and no one else seemed inclined to say anything. Why, said the Dodo, the best way to explain it is to do it. And as you might like to try the thing yourself, matter, it said. And then all the party were placed along the course here and there. There was no 1, 2, 3 and away, but they began running when they liked and left off when they liked, so that it was not easy to know when the race was over. However, when they had been running half an hour or so, and were quite dry again, the Dodo suddenly called out, The race is over! And they all crowded round it, panting and asking, But who had won? This question the Dodo could not answer without a great deal of thought, and it sat for a long time with one finger pressed upon its forehead. The position in which you usually see Shakespeare in pictures of him. I don't think I've ever seen a picture of Shakespeare. We had I'm not even sure, what?
I'm trying to figure out how a dodo is pressing a finger against his forehead.
Well, that's not important. In Wonderland, obviously, dodos have fingers. I want to know what kind of illustration are they talking about of Shakespeare? I've never seen a picture of Shakespeare that has hands in it.
No.
Usually it's just,
Yeah.
rough to bald head.
Yeah.
Nothing above or below it.
A bust at most.
Yes, exactly. While the rest waited in silence. At last the Dodo said, Everybody has won, and all must have prizes. But who is to give the prizes? Quite a chorus of voices asked. Why, she, of course, said the Dodo, pointing to Alice with one finger, and the whole party at once crowded round her, calling out in a confused way, Prizes! Prizes! Alice had no idea what to do, and in despair, she put her hand in her pocket and pulled out a box of comfits. Comfits.
I think those are
like little candy. The salt water had not gotten into it, and she handed them around as prizes. There was exactly one apiece all around. But she must have a prize herself, you know, said the Mouse. Of course, the Dodo replied very gravely. What else have you got in your pocket? He went on, turning to Alice. Only a thimble, said Alice sadly. Hand it over here, said the Dodo. Then they all crowded round her once more, while the Dodo solemnly presented the thimble, saying, We beg your acceptance of this elegant thimble. And when it had finished this short speech, they all said, How can a dodo? Also, yes, dodos are sadly extinct in the real world, kids. I'm sorry to tell you. Alice thought the whole thing very absurd, but they all looked so grave that she did not dare to laugh. And as she could not think of anything to say, she simply bowed and took the thimble, looking as solemn as she could. The next thing was to eat the comfits. This caused some noise and confusion, as the large birds complained they could not taste theirs, and the small ones choked and had to be patted on the back. However, it was over at last, and they sat down again in a ring and begged the mouse to tell them something more. You promised to tell me your history, you know, said Alice, and why it is you hate C and D, she added in a whisper, half afraid that it would be offended again. Mine is a long and sad tale, said the mouse, turning to Alice and sighing. It is a long tale, certainly, said Alice, looking down with wonder at the mouse's tail. But why do you call it sad? She kept on puzzling about it while the mouse was speaking, so that her idea of the tale was something like this. You got it, just to appreciate, you can see this is what the text looks like on the page. Must have a trial, for really this morning I've nothing to do, said the mouse to the cur. Such a trial, my dear sir, with no jury or judge. You're not attending, said the mouse to Alice severely. What are you thinking of? I beg your pardon, said Alice very humbly. You had got to the fifth bend, I think? I had not, cried the mouse sharply and very angrily. A knot, said Alice, always ready to make herself useful, and looked anxiously about her. Oh, let me help to undo it. I shall do nothing of the sort, said the mouse, getting up and walking away. You only growled in reply. I've never heard a mouse growl. I confess I haven't. Please come back and finish your story, Alice called after it, and the others all joined in chorus. Yes, please do. But the mouse only shook its head impatiently and walked a little quicker. What a pity it wouldn't stay, sighed the Lory, as soon as it was quite out of sight. And an old crab took the opportunity of saying to her daughter, Enough to try the patience of an oyster. Don't be rude to your mother, kids, unless she deserves it. This speech caused a remark. Oh, sorry. I skipped a little. I wish I had our Dinah here. I know I do, said Alice aloud, addressing nobody in particular. She'd soon fetch it back. And who is Dinah, if I might venture to ask a question? Said the Lory. Alice replied eagerly, for she was always ready to talk about her pet. Oh, Dinah's our cat, and she's such a capital one for catching mice, you can't think. You know, I wish you could see her after the birds, while she eats a little bird as soon as you look at it. Read the room. Guys, don't say that kind of thing to people. Just don't. If you're talking to a mouse, don't talk about how much your cat loves to eat mice. This is pretty straightforward.
Just when you're talking to people in general, don't talk about how much a thing you love likes to kill and eat members of their family.
Yeah, just don't do that. Would you mind turning on the light there? Sure. It's getting quite dark in here.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would get this dark this quick, but good heavens.
Indeed.
Good heavens. We must wrap up this chapter and wrap up today. It's getting so very dark. Might have to rig up a light for tomorrow. Just to be safe.
I do like how Alice, the classic British abroad, is offending everyone and calling them easily offended.
Yes. Yep. Okay. This speech caused a remarkable sensation among the party. Some of the birds hurried off at once. One old magpie began wrapping itself up very carefully, remarking, Well, I really must be getting home. The night air doesn't suit my throat. And a canary called out in a trembling voice to its children, Oh, come away, my dears. It's high time you were all in bed. On various pretexts, they all moved off, and Alice was soon left alone. Oh, I wish I hadn't mentioned Dinah, she said to herself in a melancholy tone. Nobody seems to like her down here, and I'm sure she's the best cat in the world. Oh, my dear Dinah, I wonder. And heard a little pattering of footsteps in the distance, and she looked up eagerly, half hoping that the mouse had changed his mind and was coming back to finish his story. And that is the end of chapter 4, and that is where we will end today. Put my fancy ribbon Wonderland. I'm glad you could all tune in, turn up. Tila, lorry means truck, but that's with 2 R's. In England, they call a truck a lorry. But yes, that's with 2 R's, and this is with 1 R. So some sort of bird may or may not be at all related to lorry being a truck. Anyway. Now I'm forgetting. Well, this Oh, it's a parrot, says Michelle. Apparently a Lori type of parrot. Now we know. Thank you for looking it up. Chapter, our first section, the first 4 chapters of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I will be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific, once again, to continue reading the book. And please tell your friends. I don't know. I've been doing this since March. I don't think anyone here hasn't been here before, but I've been doing this since March, and I've done a number of books, and it's been really fun, and I really enjoy doing it, which is why I'm still doing it. But it would also be nice to maybe reach a few more people if I could. So if you people could always watch them after the fact. That's totally fine. I mean, I love having people in the chat, but having people watch after the fact is great too. If you're new to the stream, there are links below to some of the other books that I've read, which are archived in playlists if you want to check those out. I'm also a musician. There's also a link below to my music, which you can buy on my Bandcamp. I've also released an audiobook of 3 short stories, which I wrote and which are then read by me and my friends with some original music as well. So you can go check that out. You can stream the entire thing for free on my Bandcamp. Or, if you want, you can pay to download it, which is also nice. Also, if you're so inclined, tips are accepted for these readings. There's a link below. You can go to sarahshay.com/tips to find all of the payment information in one handy place. So tomorrow, obviously, I will have to rig up some sort of lighting situation. So we learned something today. Good thing I didn't do 6:30 like last time, or we would have gotten really dark. So anyway, hopefully I will see you all tomorrow and for the rest of the week. This will continue until we're done with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and then depending on how I feel and how long it is, I don't really remember that much how long the book is.